9:42 Daily Show. Welcome back. And with John Hopkins. And, John, this is, you were saying, third time you've been on the show. And in different facets. But, I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation and insightful one.
Thanks. Thanks for setting the bar high.
You are retired now. You were an attorney for...
I practiced law in the greater Madison County area for almost 50 years, and then I retired. But what I wanted to talk about today, if you don't mind, I'd like to give you some background on that. In 2011 or so, a good friend of mine by the name of Tad Armstrong came to me and said that he developed these series of clubs all through Madison County that taught the Constitution to adults. Mm-hmm. They read Supreme Court opinions, they analyzed them, and then they went on. And there was a class in Alton, and the guy that was doing it, volunteer lawyer that was doing it, no longer wanted to do it anymore. And he asked me if I wanted to take it over. And I said, well, how did you get into this? And he said, this is the true story. He's sitting in a donut shop in Edwardsville, and these two guys are arguing about everything that the Constitution allows and doesn't allow. And finally he got up and said, you guys have no idea what the H you're talking about. And he goes, well, why don't you teach us? So he says, maybe I will. So they started this class in the basement of a church in Edwardsville. Then it expanded all over the place. So
That's
when
cool.
it came to me, I went to Mary Albert Fritz, who was then the president of the Alton Wood River Bar. I said, let's do this as a bar association project, which we did. Mary and I did it for, we took it over the class that a lawyer by the name of Neil Wallace had, and then we expanded it into our own class. And then basically we had 4 years. The students would study for 4 years, read Supreme Court opinions, analyze them, and then they got a certificate of graduation. And the night of the graduation from the Illinois Supreme Court, Justice Carmeier came down and gave them all a speech, gave them all the graduation certificates, and after that. That was about 6 or 7 years ago. After that, we have what we call graduate classes, meaning the students who have gone through the 4-year course, then we analyze the cases that have come out in the past 12 months. That has two advantages because the students are already versed on the Constitution. They can analyze the current cases and analyze it critically. And then the bigger advantage, in a way, was we always met in church basements, which, here's a surprise, you can't drink in church basements. So we would meet at different places where we could have a cocktail or two, and that prompted some livelier discussions, in a sense. Mm-hmm. I'm proud to say we had a number of people involved in this, and one of them was my friend from John Almond from St. Mary's, who's a professor of law at St. Louis University. He joined our group and was highly complimentary to the group in terms of their analysis of the Constitution, their analysis of what's going on. And so it was one of the more rewarding things that I ever did in the almost 50 years. Mary and I still do this together a little bit for some selected. I still read the constitutional Supreme Court cases. So I'm really I would not consider myself an expert on the Constitution. Let's just say I'm a constitutional student. Mm-hmm. And I have some things that we might want to talk about as that applies to some of the things that are going on in Minnesota right now.
Well, and it's so fascinating too, because I don't know what happened the last couple of years, but everyone became really just a social media expert on so much, and it's not even a partisan thing. I mean, everyone on both sides of the aisle is just like, here's what I know, and here's what it is. Yeah. Matter of fact, when you see the Supreme Court cases being talked about now, like the one right now with the gender and right. sports issue, or you're looking at what is taking place in Minnesota. Does it frustrate you, before we even talk about any of this, the lack of knowledge?
It's absolutely frustrating. The situation is that ignorance is the enemy of democracy.
Mm-hmm. True.
People do not know what the Constitution says. The Constitution is not taught. We've been trying to get some things in some of the more private schools about teaching the Constitution, actually showing you what it really says. One of the more gratifying, I'll give you, there's a famous case of the Westboro Baptist Church. These were the people who used to go out to the funerals of the military people, and basically say God hates gays and all this kind of stuff. It was terrible stuff. The very first day of our class with our group of students, the ones that graduated, we took a poll. What do you think about that? Oh, that's terrible. Screw them. That should be it. As they gradually became aware of what the Constitution really does and what it's really designed to protect, they would say, yes, the First Amendment calls you to hold your nose and say, I think this is terrible, but it certainly is protected by the Constitution. That's enlightening and it's gratifying. And these people are head and shoulders above the average electorate. So to answer your question, there's a tremendous amount of misinformation. If you don't mind, I'd like to pivot to something
please.
right away. One of the things that bothers me about what's going on now in Minnesota and some other places is the lack of recognition of what is there in the Constitution, specifically the Supremacy Clause. The Supremacy Clause is in Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, and it says really simply, this Constitution and the laws of the United States which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land. And the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. What does that mean? It means if you try to suggest that your state or your city is a so-called sanctuary city so that you can defy the federal laws, you're in violation of the Supremacy Clause. The Supremacy Clause trumps that, and that you can't have sanctuary cities, in my opinion. That may be what's going to come to a head in some of the lawsuits that have finally been filed. But the federal law that says you cannot interfere with the ICE operations is the law of the land, and any state law to the contrary is void.
And so just to touch on that real quick, and I think that's where I get so confused by this whole conversation, and I think so much it becomes an emotional one instead of just a thought-provoking one, is, even this is out there. So are the states that are the sanctuary cities, the sanctuary quote-unquote states, challenging that part of the Constitution in these lawsuits?
No, they're not. What they're saying is that without identifying, they're saying the actions of the ICE agents are unconstitutional. They're not saying how they're unconstitutional, because it'd be a hard stretch to suggest that it's in violation of, say, the Fourth Amendment, which is the search and seizure. So there's never been an analysis. The lawsuits that have been filed, even by the legal analysis on CNN, those lawsuits are considered to be very weak and pretty bogus. But if you don't mind, I'd like to...
Yeah, no, you're fine. No, it's interesting.
Here's the other thing. The killing of a human being is called homicide, okay? And there are gradations of homicide. You can have justifiable homicide, which is the state executes someone after a commission of a crime and finding him guilty. Soldier commits someone in an action, or self-defense. That's the number one justifiable homicide. Unjustifiable homicide starts at murder. Now, murder is defined as action taken with premeditation or reckless disregard for the safety of someone else. Now, under those circumstances, no matter how much and how many times you view all those videos, I don't think anybody can really say that this poor woman, and she was a poor woman, she made a bad decision, they came back and cost her her life. You can't say she was murdered. I think that is the biggest lie that's being put out, because murder is a very specific definition in the law. It means premeditation, reckless. If the ICE officer was in some way negligent, there may be some other things. But I don't think there's any way. Now, number two, he can't be prosecuted under the state law. The state of Minnesota can squeal all they want about the desire of their authorities to get involved in it, but they can't. They have no authority to be involved in it. The applicability is only for the federal statutes. Let me give you a further example. The last case by the Supreme Court to deal with this was a case called Barnes versus Felix. Okay? And in the Barnes versus Felix case, the question was, there was two types of theories. One was called the immediate threat, and one was called the totality of circumstances. The Supreme Court, in a 9-0 decision.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, you're shocked by that. The truth is that approximately 50% of the cases decided by the Supreme Court are 9-0.
No kidding. See, that's what I've always wondered, if they are 9-0 or if they're nail biters.
Well, it's a kind of a misguided statistic.
Okay.
In the sense that a lot of cases go to the Supreme Court and they're about which kind of law to govern these securities regulations.
Okay.
And then there's which type of federal procedures should you have, where should we put this courthouse, those type of things. And then there's these things that involve social issues. The social issues normally do not have a 9-0, but this one did.
Okay.
And the Supreme Court said we adopt, when evaluating an excessive force claim, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You're talking about the police use excessive force, and therefore that's in violation of my rights, by the Fourth Amendment, and then et cetera. The inquiry into the reasonableness of police force requires an analysis of the totality of the circumstances, which means it's individualized to the officer in question. Now, in this particular fellow, what does it mean? It means two things. Number one, he was a trained, he gave classes on when to shoot and when not to shoot to other ICE officers. He was a trained firearms instructor, plus being an Iraqi war veteran, plus being, number two, more importantly, he had already been hit by a car and drugged and had almost 35 stitches put in his leg and arm. So he's already been hit by a car once. And there's an old thing that everybody knows about, once burned, twice shy. So under the analysis as mandated by the Supreme Court, they have to look at the individual, what was this guy thinking at the time? And at the time, this guy's thinking, I'm not going to get run over again.
Yeah, well, and see, I think that's where a lot of the arguments I feel like have just gone kind of skewed, because I don't think, it's obviously terrible this woman was killed. I'm not saying that, but sometimes I feel like it becomes, well, this is terrible, and you don't see charges brought, or you see maybe you just don't see something fall in line with what public opinion is, or what some news media outlet perceives to be public opinion, because who knows what really public opinion is anymore. But when you see this, where's the conversation go to? That's just the way our justice system works. That's,
you don't hear it, because the agenda is to. I don't want to get into politics.
I'm not trying to, yeah.
But the situation is that this is all driven by an anti-Trump situation. Obama deported more people than Trump did.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Bush, number two, and Biden deported more people than Obama. There was no fight against the ICE people then. Biden didn't do anything.
What about federal judges? Just to touch on that too, because I've seen these injunctions filed, or the federal judges step in, whether they're appointed, whatever president appoints them. Some are Trump-appointed judges that step in and in these injunctions. What do they come into play here when it comes to federal law?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it's an open area in terms of can a federal judge enjoin on behalf of a state. The question is, does a state even have a right to bring the case? So the situation is that's going to be fought. I don't know what's going to happen up there, but
it's interesting.
Ultimately it'll be set aside.
Well, and so going back into the Minnesota-Minneapolis situation, what going forward? I mean, there's still going to be protests. We saw that last night. There was another officer involved, or ICE agent involved, shooting. When does what happens next? Because, that's the bigger question.
What happens next is that sooner or later they're going to have to decide that that federal law is preeminent and that the state... See, your problem is real simple, at least in my analysis. The police in Minnesota and police in Minneapolis are not helping the ICE agents. They're having to do this, and they're not crowd control people. They're not trained to do that. That's correct. That should be done by... That's why you don't have these kind of situations in areas where they're not sanctuary cities. You don't have this in Florida. You don't have it in Texas. You don't have it in Louisiana. You don't have it in other places. You have it in the sanctuary cities because the police do not help the ICE agents. And that's a political decision that should be set aside.
Well, and see, that's where I find, again, this is an interesting conversation, because it's not really, to me, a political one. It comes down to what the law is. And, is that where it becomes not really the question, but really, if you don't like the way the law is, then vote,
Change the law.
And that's kind of what my open-ended question is to you on this, because it really is a matter of A to B, and here's the period at the end of the sentence.
Let me just read, if you don't mind. This is from this Felix versus Alexander case. It says here, when a court considers that traffic stops are highly dangerous for police officers, and evasion suggests that a driver is preparing to commit or has committed a more serious crime, the use of force may still be found to have reasonable, even if the moment of threat doctrine were not applied. Meaning, if this guy thinks he's going to get run over, then he has a right to bring the totality of circumstances.
This is very fascinating. Do you want to do this, John? Let's take a break for top of the hour news, or not top of the hour news, but for top of the hour break here. We'll come back and continue this conversation on this Thursday morning. You stay there, and we'll be here.
Struggling with depression that just won't go away? At Precision TMS, we offer a non-invasive, drug-free treatment designed to target the areas of the brain linked to mood regulation. Using FDA-cleared transcranial magnetic stimulation, gentle magnetic pulses help reactivate underperforming brain circuits without surgery or sedation. Many patients experience real relief, even after other treatments haven't worked. Our experienced team provides personalized care every step of the way. Contact Precision TMS today to see if TMS therapy is right for you.
Throughout all life stages, you need someone in your corner, guiding you on your health and wellness journey. At OSF Healthcare, that's your primary care provider. Your OSF primary care provider is there for every stage of life. Find a provider today at osfhealthcare.org/primary.
As America prepares to celebrate 250 years of freedom, there's never been a better time to show your pride. The Flag Keeper provides everything you need to display your flag with honor, from American state and U.S. Armed Service flags to flagpoles, accessories, and installation kits for homes and businesses across the Riverbend area. Call 618-467-0020 or visit theflagkeeper.com for your free estimate today. Accidents happen in a heartbeat, but lives change forever. Whether it's a car crash, workplace injury, medical malpractice, or wrongful death, you don't have to face the consequences alone. Keith Short and Associates brings over 33 years of experience and a reputation for fighting fiercely for your rights. For relentless representation that you can trust, call Keith Short and Associates at 618-254-0055 today for a free consultation.
Tomorrow isn't built by dreamers. It's built by doers. Because progress doesn't work unless we do. So at Ameren, we've been hard at work putting energy to work for you. Adding underground cables, installing advanced switches and sensors, storm hardening poles and power lines, making the energy grid stronger today so it can meet your needs tomorrow. Learn about projects in your area at Ameren.com/energyfuture.
At Alton Elite Jiu-Jitsu, we help students of all ages build confidence, discipline, and real-world strength. Join a supportive community that challenges you to grow both on and off the mat. Experience the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with a 7-day free trial at our new location. Call 618-795-2692 or visit altonelite.com to start your journey today. Train hard, serve others, live elite at Alton Elite Jiu-Jitsu.
Do you need to declutter your space? Time to call me, the Queen of Junk. Since 1993, we have grown to be the leader in residential, commercial, and property management junk removal. At Sparks Junk Removal, we are eco-friendly. We recycle, donate, or repurpose items back into our community. Trash is our last resort to the landfill. Plus, with our all-inclusive service, our crews handle everything from labor to lifting and landfill fees. Give us a call or visit our website, sparksjunkremoval.net, to reclaim your space today.
10 o'clock, downtown Alton. You're watching our daily show on RiverBender.com, or you're listening to it on RiverBender Apple Podcasts, wherever you get this show. Busy morning today. Oh, man. Hey, before we go any further into this conversation, just wanted to fill you in that we'll be bringing you guys the city council meetings from all the surrounding areas, Alton, Godfrey. We've had those reports, but also Bethalto, South Roxana is now a part of them, Grafton too. You can see them all at RiverBender.com/video. So going back into this, and it's really a fascinating time to watch. Have Supreme Court cases, before we go into any more, have they gotten this much attention before? You feel like the last 10 years, we've really had a lot more eyes on, certain decisions that are coming down than maybe what. Well,
I'll answer that. The answer to that is yes, and the reason is access to Supreme Court opinions is much easier. Mm-hmm. Access to the oral arguments is much easier. It used to be shrouded in a lot of mystery. Lawyer junkies would get into it, but now the public has it. The problem is there is a misguided belief, in my opinion, that the Supreme Court is just totally partisan. I don't believe it is. I think they made some decisions against Trump, they make some decisions for Trump, and they just went 9-0 in favor of the police in that case we just talked about. So I think there is a belief that the Supreme Court is been demystified, and they analyze a lot of the things that they do. So.
Well, and so as we go into all of this, it seems like a lot of the controversies, and I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong because I'm not paid enough or I'm not smart, I'm not well qualified enough to really answer that question, but it all starts with a lack of what I think is just basic knowledge on how our country operates, and to me, I'm not saying that feelings shouldn't be felt or you shouldn't act, you should do something, but you got to vote and you got to do things, by the proverbial book,
Here's the point. I mean, if you're sitting there and you hear ICE agents murdered mother of 3.
I'd be pretty frustrated.
It sounds horrible.
Yeah.
Sounds just like what happened in Ferguson.
Oh, you're absolutely right, yeah.
Cop shoots man in head who had hands up, don't shoot. Now, what do we know? We know that was all a lie. The guy that perpetuated that was a guy by the name of Dorian Johnson, who said that he was with Michael Brown and he had his hands up. Total lie. Dorian Johnson just died at a violent death last September of 2025. But what's the point? The point is that Bob McCullough, the prosecuting attorney, investigated it, found nothing criminal with regards to Darren Wilson, the officer involved. The Attorney General from the United States comes in, Eric Holder, and says, you bunch of racist hillbillies, you don't know what you're doing. The government of the United States will take this over. They thoroughly investigated, found no wrongdoing on behalf of Darren Wilson. Then Wesley Bell runs for St. Louis prosecuting attorney with the idea, I'm going to redo the investigation. I'm going to bring it in a third time. He does it. Once again, nothing done wrong. So people still claim that there was wrongdoing with regards to the death of Michael Brown. They're just not going to believe the facts, no matter how well they're presented.
Well, I just wish the rhetoric would tone down, because I have no opinion, to be honest with you, on any of. I just never share it, but I think that the rhetoric that's used on media and media companies is terrible, I think that's what it leads to, because there could be conversations and honest ones, and I think if people listen to the oral arguments of Supreme Court cases, they'd be fascinated just to hear,
the ones that
thoughts
were just,
and feedback. Exactly. Yesterday was very fascinating, or 2 days ago was.
Yeah, some parts of it were just, when the attorney was asked, what's a woman?
Well, and what I mean by that, though, and I'm not really pinpointing the point, I'm just saying just to hear how the conversations are had, because we aren't having conversations anymore. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to get into the whole rabbit hole of, protests and all that, because I think everyone has the right to, but it's just, whatever your opinion is, there's still a rule of law, and you got to look at that to really understand.
You have a right to protest, but you don't have a right to throw firebombs. You don't have a right to throw firecrackers. You don't have a right to throw frozen water bottles at the cops.
It's fair. It's really fair. And now coming up, John, there's a lot of Supreme Court cases. This is where it gets fascinating, because these are, in my opinion, are going to be make or break decisions for this administration. The tariff one's the biggest one, and I don't know if Trump's just doing that to get everyone riled up and say putting a public opinion campaign against the justices right now. But that has been his thought: is listen, if they do this, we are in deep trouble. Is that what is your thought just on the tariff case and any of the other ones?
I don't know. That is a really highly technical.
Yeah.
The issue is it a tariff or is it a tax? Is it what he's done in the argument against it is he's usurped the authority of Congress. That's the argument in a nutshell.
Okay.
And as such, it's unconstitutional. The Constitution lays out the Constitution was written for the purposes of having a strong legislative and somewhat of a weak executive. The judiciary was sort of an afterthought. So the problem is that the terrorist one will be one. The birthright citizen one.
That'll be monumental, I feel.
And then the gender affirming one, that's gonna go 7-2, 8-1. They're not gonna do anything with that.
So going in, one final thing, because I want to talk to you as these cases are heard and they're decided, just to explore them more. But I'm so fascinated by the federal judge. So can I ask you about federal judges one more time?
Sure.
Do they hinder a Supreme Court case ever? Where like a decision maybe could, maybe the Supreme Court justices are looking at this a different way until a federal judge intervenes. Is there ever an intervention problem?
Yes, the problem is real simple. Like all lower court judges, the district court judges at the federal level are supposed to follow the precedents as set forth by the Supreme Court.
Okay.
Sometimes they do not.
Okay.
Sometimes they simply go off on politically motivated tangents. I don't think it's been as radical as ever as it is now.
True.
You have situations where the law is, at least in the opinion of many people, very clear and it's being ignored. So you got a situation where I don't know what's going to happen with the lawsuits by Minnesota or by Illinois, but I think if you had a anti-Trump federal district judge, of which there are many, you might find one decision, you find another way from that. But I think it's a situation where ultimately it'll be rectified by the Supreme Court, and they'll.
I'm just really the birthright citizenship one is going to be very fascinating. The tariff one I'm more than curious about too, just because it just seems like there's back and forth where it could go either way. I don't know, because you follow this a lot more than I do.
The tariff one is one in which they can simply say, we send this back for further study.
Really? Okay. Is that so they can do that option too?
Oh, sure.
Oh, wow. So what happens then? Does it just keep going as normal until they review it again?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the deal is that they could simply say that tariff is too involved with other stuff. The legislators have to do this, have to do that. So they can do that. That's easy enough.
This is really interesting. And John, I really appreciate your time. And I think so many times, like I said earlier, media sensationalizes everything. And I'm not taking away from anyone's feelings, but there's also got to be an adult conversation to be had also. And I'm not saying that you and I are both right. I'm just saying I wish that more of this discussion could be had, and even from a different standpoint. Who knows? I'm sure that happens in your classes too sometimes, or you've had those fun discussions in your tenure.
We had a lot of conservative people. We had some few liberal people. The liberal people dropped off as Trump came in.
Okay.
Because it became too much. Trump was involved. Trump is toxic to a lot of discussions.
Yeah.
Whether you like him or you dislike him.
It's true.
He is toxic to a lot of discussions. And although I think he's on the right track to do things.
John, it's always fascinating to talk to you. This was a good one. I like this one. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, young man.
10:09, a little bit of change. Denise Sparks joins us in a couple of minutes. You stay there. I'll be here.